Hello, welcome to our next lesson. So we're finished with perfect competition and we're actually going to be moving on to imperfect competition. So there are a lot of market structures under imperfect competition. These are a few. Imperfect information is a really important concept. Information in general is a really important concept, and it's really important in macroeconomics as well as microeconomics. In macroeconomics, we use the information that around us to make decisions, and that influences our exchange rates, our speculation, animal spirits, all of those things. Information delays, contribute to sticky prices. So it's really important for macro-wise, and remember that macroeconomics is really just an aggregated micro economics, so they're intrinsically linked. In microeconomics, imperfect information is an incredibly important concept because it really helps tie in the idea of a rational consumer behaviour. Imperfect information leads to a rational consumer behaviour, and we saw that in perfect competition there is no irrational consumer behaviour, and irrational consumer behaviour causes a huge impact in these market structures. So under imperfect market structures we've got monopolistic market structures, oligopolies, monopolies and natural monopolies, and we're going to go through all of these, not in today's lesson, but we are going to go through all of these eventually. And I've put monopsonies over here on their own because they're actually a buyer market structure. These are seller kind of dominated market structures. So we're going to look at monopolistic market structures today and all the way up until Easter holidays, and then after that we're going to start to look at these in this order. So monopolistic market structures, don't get them confused with monopolies. Some of you will for a good few weeks, that's fine, we'll find our feet, don't worry about it, but they're actually very, very different. I would say they're probably the other end of the spectrum of market structures, but as economists we just like to confuse you with our naming. So today we're going to have a look at the characteristics. You're going to come up with some examples, we're going to explain those so you can get your head around kind of what the wider picture of this market looks like. So here are our characteristics, and these are our kind of head titles of our characteristics, and we'll go through them with a bit more detail. So many buyers and sellers, not unlimited, it's not perfect competition, but there are many buyers and sellers in the market, lots of consumer switching in the market, lots of kind of low consumer loyalty in the market, but we'll have a look at what that might mean a little bit later on. There is slight product differentiation in the market, so there are some kind of automatic things that will come into mind when you think about product differentiation, things like colour, size, quality, all of those things, but there are also some things that you may not have thought of as well. So one of the things that might differentiate a product is time. So a train ticket from London to Sheffield might be a very different price if you go at 8 o'clock in the morning compared to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So even though they are the exact same good, they're actually slightly differentiated. And also location might be one of those things that differentiates products as well. Things like a meal somewhere, if you're in the centre of Paris, might be a very different price for that croissant compared to somewhere rural in France. So location can differentiate products, and actually we'll have a look at that when we come up with some examples. So there's a small amount of price setting power in the market, so producers, suppliers in the market are able to have some kind of command over their prices, not very much, but a little bit, and obviously that has an impact on our diagram. You should already be thinking about the impact that has on that diagram and what that means for that AR and MR curve. Barriers to entry and exit are very low in the market, so there's not very much stopping you from entering the market, but equally there's not very much stopping you from exiting the market as well. And as I mentioned previously when we looked at perfect competition, there are barriers to exit in the market, and probably next video we'll be having a look at really kind of the nitty-gritty of what those barriers to exit in a market may well be. So I want you to think about this, kind of lots of buyers and sellers, lots of kind of a very small amount of price setting powers, Products are slightly different, barriers to entry exit are low, and I want you to think about some examples that you may know of that fit into these characteristics. So industries that you know of, just pause the video, write as many as you can down. We'll go through some. If you have any questions, ask me on Google Classroom as well. So here are some examples here. So hairdressers, takeaways, pubs and bars, laundrettes, bakeries. I'm also going to add kind of like corner shops to this, like little greengrocers and corner shops to this. They're actually a really good example. We'll touch on that in a moment. But if you think about these markets, they really fit into those kind of characteristics. Lots of buyers and sellers in the market. You know, your hairdressers, lots of buyers, lots of sellers in the market. Takeaways, just think about your kind of local high street. There's so many different chicken shops, takeaways, pizza shops there. Some slight product differentiation to do with taste and, you know, kind of quality or offers that they might give you, but you know, they're not that particularly different. Same with pubs and bars. I'm hoping you don't know too much about pubs and bars yet. But there's, you know, lots of different pubs and bars, and if you walk around your area, you probably see lots of different pubs and lots of different bars. Laundrettes as well, and also bakeries, lots of small local bakeries. And if you think about how easy it is to actually enter that market, if you think about how easy it might be for you to set up a bakery, for instance, or to get into any of these industries, probably not pubs and bars for a while, then you actually can think that it's probably pretty easy. What do you really need to set up a bakery? You know, as long as you're good at baking and you've got an oven and some equipment in your house, it's relatively easy to enter that market. And there are lots of them around. And lots of consumer switching as well happening here. I know that some of you will contest that with your hairdressers and barbers, but there is a lot of consumer switching there. The reason I wanted to touch back on your corner shop is because your corner shop is a really good example of this tiny amount of price setting power. Not necessarily because its products are differentiated in a very obvious sense, but if you think about, like, for instance, a pint of milk, you can get your pint of milk from your local corner shop or Tesco's. That pint of milk is actually exactly the same, really, but the location, the ease of access to your corner shop compared to, I don't know how far away your local Tesco's is, it means that they have a very small amount of price setting power, and they can actually charge us a small amount more for that tin of beans, that pint of milk, than Tesco's does, because of the convenience of their location of that. So it's a good example of location being differentiating that product rather than something physically that they're doing differentiating that product. So that's kind of the basic characteristics of the market and a few examples. Next lesson we're going to be looking at what those characteristics mean for the firm and how that influences the firm's diagram, their setup, their costs, their revenues. So do be thinking about that between now and then. But yeah, that's kind of the overview of monopolistic and imperfect competition, our first market structure. I hope you've enjoyed your learning, and I will see you next lesson. Thanks.